Imagine walking outside on a warm June morning, coffee in hand, ready to admire the hydrangea you've babied for 3 summers. Instead, you find this. Leaves curled inward like they're trying to protect themselves. Flowers that were once the size of soccer balls, now shrunken, brown at the edges, collapsing under their own weight. Most gardeners look at a scene like this and think the plant is simply old, or thirsty, or unlucky. But soil scientists who study ornamental shrubs have found something almost nobody expects in the majority of dying hydrangea cases. The plant isn't dying from lack of care. It's dying from the wrong kind of care. Here's what almost nobody realizes. The exact ingredients sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now, the ones you'd normally throw away, can reverse damage that expensive fertilizers can't touch. By the end of this video, you'll know all 7. And one of them, the third one, is so overlooked that even experienced growers miss it for years. In the next 10 minutes, we're going to walk through exactly why hydrangeas collapse, what's actually happening underground while the leaves are turning brown above, and the 7 household ingredients that can pull a plant back from the edge. Some of these fixes will surprise you. One of them is sitting in your spice rack. Another is something you've probably poured down the drain 1,000 times without realizing what it was capable of. But before any of that works, you need to understand the single mistake that causes almost every hydrangea collapse in the first place. And it's not what you think. Number 1. Epsom salt. Have you ever wondered why some hydrangeas produce leaves that look almost yellow, with only the veins staying dark green? Picture a hydrangea in a front yard in Ohio. The owner waters it faithfully, gives it sun, even talks to it. And still, season after season, the leaves come in pale, weak and thin, like the plant is running on empty. What's happening underground is easy to miss. Magnesium is one of the core building blocks of chlorophyll, the pigment that lets a plant actually capture sunlight and turn it into energy. Without enough magnesium, a hydrangea can be sitting in perfect sun and still starve, because it physically cannot process the light hitting its leaves. Think of it like a solar panel with half its wiring disconnected. The sun is there, the panel just can't use it. The mistake most gardeners make is assuming pale leaves mean the plant needs more water or more sun, so they water more. They move the pot, and the yellowing gets worse, because the actual deficiency was never addressed. Here's the fix. Dissolve 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt into a gallon of water and pour it around the base of the plant once a month during the growing season. Epsom salt is simply magnesium sulfate, a compound so gentle that commercial rose and tomato growers have used it for generations to correct exactly this kind of deficiency. Within about 2 to 3 weeks, you'll notice something remarkable. The new leaves come in noticeably darker, almost glossy, and the veining that used to stand out against pale tissue starts to disappear because the whole leaf is finally producing chlorophyll evenly. But magnesium deficiency isn't the biggest threat to a struggling hydrangea. There's something happening beneath the soil line that's far more dangerous and far more common. Number 2. Cinnamon. Here's something strange. Pull a dying hydrangea gently out of its pot, and sometimes the roots don't look brown and healthy. They look almost slimy, grey, and soft enough to fall apart in your hand. That's not old age. That's root rot, and it's quietly the number 1 killer of hydrangeas in home gardens. Picture the roots sitting in soil that never fully dries out, especially after a string of rainy days. Fungal spores that are naturally present in almost all soil suddenly find the perfect environment, dark, wet, oxygen-starved, and they multiply. The roots, instead of pulling in water and nutrients, start rotting from the tip inward, like a straw slowly collapsing from one end. Botanists have long pointed out that most fungal root pathogens can't tolerate certain natural antifungal compounds. And one of the strongest happens to be sitting in your spice cabinet: cinnamon. Ground cinnamon contains cinnamaldehyde, a compound that has been used in traditional and commercial agriculture as a natural fungicide for decades, especially to protect cuttings and seedlings from damping off disease. The mistake most gardeners make here is treating yellowing leaves with more fertilizer, assuming the plant is hungry, when the actual problem is happening entirely underground, invisible from above. The fix is almost absurdly simple. If you catch early root rot, dust the affected root area lightly with ground cinnamon before repotting into fresh, well-draining soil. For general prevention, a light dusting on the soil surface every few weeks helps keep fungal populations from establishing in the first place. Growers who use this consistently report the same pattern roots that were slimy and grey develop new white root tips within a couple of weeks. A clear sign the plant is finally absorbing water again instead of drowning in it. But even with healthy roots, some hydrangeas still collapse under stress they can't recover from on their own. And the reason involves something most people have only ever associated with headaches. Number 3, aspirin. Most people never notice this, but plants have something remarkably similar to an immune response. When a hydrangea is under serious stress from transplant shock, sudden heat, or storm damage, it doesn't just sit there passively. It tries to defend itself. The compound responsible is called salicylic acid, and here's the strange part. It's the exact same compound, chemically, that aspirin is built from. University plant physiology research has shown that salicylic acid acts as a signaling molecule inside plants, essentially telling cells to activate defense mechanisms and recover faster from shock. It's like an internal alarm system that triggers healing. The mistake most gardeners make is assuming a transplant-shocked or storm-battered hydrangea just needs time. Sometimes it does, but sometimes the plant is so overwhelmed that its own defense signaling never fully switches on, and it slips further instead of recovering. Here's the fix. Dissolve 1 uncoated plain aspirin tablet in a gallon of water and use it to water a stressed hydrangea once, right after transplanting or after a damaging storm. This isn't a monthly routine, it's a targeted intervention for acute stress. Within days, gardeners who use this correctly often describe the same thing. Wilting stems that seemed permanently collapsed regain firmness, almost like the plant remembered how to stand back up. That solves shock. But there's a slower, quieter kind of damage happening in acidic or alkaline soil that changes the entire color of your hydrangea blooms, and most people have no idea their soil is even the cause. Number 4, coffee grounds. Here's a question almost nobody asks. Why do some hydrangeas bloom vivid blue, while others, planted from the exact same variety, bloom pink? It isn't genetics. It isn't luck. It's chemistry happening entirely underground. Hydrangea flower color is controlled by soil pH and the availability of aluminum. In acidic soil, aluminum becomes available to the plant, and the blooms turn blue. In neutral or alkaline soil, that aluminum locks up, unavailable, and the blooms shift toward pink. Commercial growers have known this for generations, which is exactly why nurseries can advertise color-changing hydrangeas. They're not changing the plant, they're changing the soil. The mistake most gardeners make is fertilizing generously without ever checking whether their soil has drifted too alkaline, especially in regions with hard tap water. Over time, alkaline soil doesn't just shift bloom color, it can also lock up other nutrients the plant desperately needs, contributing to the exact weak, pale growth we talked about earlier. The fix used coffee grounds, dried and worked lightly into the soil around the base, gradually lower soil pH, and add a slow trickle of nitrogen. Sprinkle a thin layer, no more than a quarter inch, every few weeks, rather than dumping a thick layer at once, which can actually mat down and block airflow to the roots. Within one growing season, gardeners consistently see 2 results: a gentle deepening of bloom color toward blue or purple, and noticeably improved leaf vigor. because the soil is finally in a range where nutrients are actually available to the plant instead of locked away. But color and nutrients aside, there's one mineral almost every home gardener ignores completely, and its absence causes something that looks disturbingly like disease. Number 5. Eggshells. Picture this. A hydrangea with otherwise healthy green leaves. But the newest growth at the tips comes in twisted, stunted, almost deformed. It looks like some kind of infection. It's usually not. It's calcium deficiency, and it's one of the most misdiagnosed hydrangea problems there is. Calcium isn't just for bones and shells in plants. It acts like structural rebar, holding cell walls together. Long-term gardening observations have shown that without enough calcium, new growth literally can't build strong cell walls. So the tips come in weak, curled, or malformed, even while older leaves look perfectly fine. The mistake most gardeners make is treating deformed new growth as a pest or disease problem, reaching for insecticides or fungicides that do absolutely nothing. Because the real issue is a missing mineral, not an invader. The fix is sitting in your trash can after breakfast. Rinse and crush eggshells into a fine powder. Then work a tablespoon into the soil around the base of the plant. Because eggshells break down slowly, this acts like a savings account for the plant, a steady, long-term calcium reserve, rather than a quick spike. Over the following month, new growth that comes in after treatment noticeably straightens out, leaves unfurl fully instead of staying curled, a visible sign the plant finally has the structural minerals it needs to build itself correctly. Calcium solves structure. But there's a totally different kind of weakness one that shows up specifically in the stems and flower stalks that almost no gardening blog ever mentions. Number 6. Banana peels. What if the reason your hydrangea's flower stalks keep flopping over has nothing to do with the flowers themselves? Picture a hydrangea loaded with beautiful blooms, except the stems can't hold the weight. They bend, then collapse, dragging gorgeous flowers straight into the dirt. This usually points to a potassium shortage. Potassium works almost like a traffic controller inside the plant, regulating water movement and helping cells maintain rigidity, particularly in stems. Without it, a plant can produce plenty of flowers but lack the structural strength to hold them upright. The mistake most gardeners make is blaming stem weakness on the flower size itself, assuming the blooms are simply too heavy, when the real fix has nothing to do with the flowers at all. The fix: chop banana peels into small pieces and bury them a few inches into the soil near the root zone, or steep peels in water for 2 to 3 days and use that soaking water to irrigate the plant. Banana peels are naturally rich in potassium, and as they break down, they release it gradually. Within a few weeks, stems that used to bend under bloom weight begin standing noticeably straighter, and flower heads that were dragging on the ground start holding themselves upright again. That handles strength. But there's one final ingredient, the most overlooked of all 7, that fixes something almost no one thinks to check: the actual water quality going into the plant. Number 7. Apple cider vinegar. Here's the real problem hiding behind so many mystery hydrangea declines: the water itself. Municipal tap water in much of the United States is treated to be alkaline and mineral-heavy for plumbing safety, great for pipes, but slowly harmful for a plant that evolved to thrive in slightly acidic forest edge soil. Over months of watering with hard alkaline tap water, soil pH creeps upward without the gardener ever noticing, quietly locking up iron, aluminum, and other nutrients the same way we saw with alkaline soil earlier, except this time, the cause isn't the soil. It's every watering can poured in good faith. The mistake most gardeners make is assuming water is water, and that as long as the plant is getting moisture, the source doesn't matter. The fix: mix 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar into a gallon of water and use this every 3rd or 4th watering. The mild acidity gently corrects pH drift over time without shocking the plant the way stronger treatments can. Gardeners who make this simple swap often notice, within several weeks, an overall greening and perking up of the entire plant, not from a new nutrient, but because nutrients already in the soil finally become available again. So here's the biggest lesson hiding underneath everything we just covered. A dying hydrangea is almost never a mystery. It's a message. Pale leaves, floppy stems, twisted new growth, shrinking blooms, each one is the plant quietly telling you exactly which piece is missing. Magnesium for energy, cinnamon for defense against rot, aspirin for acute stress, coffee grounds for pH and nitrogen, eggshells for structure, banana peels for strength, apple cider vinegar for the water itself. 7 ordinary ingredients, most of which you'd normally throw in the trash, each solving a problem most gardeners never even knew existed. The next time you see a hydrangea struggling, you won't see a dying plant. You'll see a puzzle with an obvious answer. If this changed the way you think about your own garden, let me know in the comments which of these 7 surprised you the most, and if you want the follow-up video on reviving hydrangeas that have already lost all their leaves, subscribe so you don't miss it.